In 2015, you can hear the sheer terror in a woman's voice. It's almost Blair Witch Project-esque. That large black blob might be Bigfoot. Some say they're getting close.
Spotted Bigfoot in Cleveland County, and this isn't the first time. The legend continues. One man in Kaiser says he encountered the mythic beast just last week.
I don't know if you've ever been in a dream and something's chasing you and you're having a difficult time moving. It was almost like everything was in slow motion. I'm headed down the ridge at this point, and I remembered that I had a .357 in my backpack. I stopped, pulled out my gun, and just very quickly looked back. I saw Bigfoot.
6 terrifying encounters, 1 chilling pattern, a towering figure in the woods, a pale beast sprinting across a lonely road, logs shredded high in the mountains, and eerie knocks echoing through the night. These aren't campfire tales. They're real moments of fear, proof that something is still out there, watching from the dark. Location: North Carolina. The forests of North Carolina have always carried a quiet, watchful feeling. The kind that makes you look over your shoulder even when you know you're alone. For 3 North Carolinians, that feeling became much more than just nerves. Their encounters with something massive, intelligent, and terrifying are enough to shake even the most skeptical mind. Tim Wheeler is a self-proclaimed mountain man. Tough, experienced, and used to the sounds of the wild. But the night he came face to face with a creature he believes was Bigfoot, he admits it shook him to his core. He was out calling coyotes, something he'd done countless times before. The sun had dipped behind the trees, leaving just enough light to see the outline of his property. At first, he thought he had succeeded. He could hear movement, branches breaking. But what stepped out of the tree line wasn't a coyote.
This thing was 10 foot tall. He had beautiful hair. It scared me.
This thing was 10 feet tall, Tim recalls, his voice still trembling years later. It had beautiful hair, but it scared me to death. When the creature went after his dogs, Tim grabbed his gun and ran outside. I hollered at it, told it to get away. And it did. But then it came back. Panicked, he called 911. Deputies arrived, filing what they listed as a suspicious person report. But everyone who saw Tim that night knew he wasn't talking about a person. His description was eerily detailed. A creature with long arms, a flat face, and, most disturbing of all, 6 fingers, babwis on each hand. Even Cleveland County deputies admitted they were baffled. "It blows my mind," Sergeant Mark Self said at the time. The stories of a Sasquatch have been in this county since the 1970s, killing chickens, breaking into houses. And what Tim described sounds just like those old reports. But Tim isn't the only North Carolinian with a story to tell.
By the way, the legend of the Sasquatch has been in Cleveland County since the 1970s. This time, the spotting came into 911 as a suspicious persons report.
What do you think?
Well, you know, this is the first time I've actually heard of the Bigfoot with blonde hair, but it's been so sunny out, you know, and it could have bleached out the hair a bit. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe he found a bottle of peroxide or something.
Possibly. Who knows? Yeah.
All right.
Meet John Bruner, a soft-spoken man who claims to have locked eyes with a Bigfoot for a full 10 seconds. "It was huge," John says. Bipedal. No hair on its face, flat nose, stringy, matted hair on its body. And it smelled awful, worse than a wet dog, almost like a musty, rotten hide. John's sighting happened during a weekend Bigfoot hunting expedition. It was the closest encounter he's ever had, and it left him shaken. The thing took 5 steps and covered 40 yards, John explains. 5 steps? That's not human. That's like something out of a superhero comic. Like LeBron James on steroids. Skeptics laughed, but John didn't care. He knows what he saw, and he's not alone. 911 dispatchers in the region have fielded calls from terrified residents reporting strange noises, knocks, and even screams echoing through the night.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, no, Ziggy, no.
Then there's Ebony Bird, whose encounter happened in the small town of Littleton on a chilly November evening in 2019. She was driving near Bowers Road, headed to the post office before it closed. "I came to a stop sign," she says. "I looked down the road, and there it was. Bigfoot. It was standing upright like a man, broad-shouldered, its arms hanging past its knees. Ebony was so stunned she kept driving, then turned around and went back. I couldn't find it again," she explains, "but I know what I saw. It wasn't a man. It wasn't a bear. It was Bigfoot." Her cousin didn't believe her, laughing when she called to tell the story, but Ebony's aunt didn't laugh. "She told me there have been sightings in that area before," Ebony says. "That gave me chills. I wasn't crazy. Other people have seen it too." For Ebony, the moment was life-changing.
But it wasn't a human. It was not a human. So I turned around, I put my stuff in the post office, and I came back and I turned down here and I drove all the way down to where I saw it, and I couldn't find anything in sight. There's a church back on this side, and then there's a graveyard.
"I've never been one to lie or make up stories," she says firmly. "I was shaken for days after that. But I know what I saw: 3 different witnesses, 3 very different encounters, all pointing to one chilling truth. There is something roaming the woods of North Carolina, something massive, intelligent, and powerful enough to terrify even lifelong outdoorsmen. Whether it was a 10-foot creature chasing Tim's dogs, a massive shadow stepping toward John in the wilderness, or the broad-shouldered figure Ebony saw in the middle of the road, one thing is certain. The legend of Sasquatch in North Carolina is alive and well, and the people who have seen it will never forget the moment they came face to face with the unexplained. The Rocky Mountain states are no stranger to tales of Bigfoot, but few stories carry the raw detail and emotional weight of the Oxford Peak encounter. It was Labor Day weekend, 1980, when prospector Clint Josephson and his friend Brian Belknap set out on what they thought would be an ordinary day of gold prospecting. Instead, they came face to face with something that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Their morning began like so many before it, saddling up their horses, packing their gear, and setting out on the 4-mile trek up the mountain. The 2 men were after gold that day, hoping to turn their hard work into a few dollars. But almost immediately, they noticed something was wrong. The first sign came from their horses. Normally calm and obedient, the animals were unusually skittish, shying away from the trail and tossing their heads nervously. Then came the sound that made both men freeze. An eerie, guttural scream echoing from somewhere up ahead. It wasn't human, it wasn't an elk, and it wasn't any animal they knew. When they reached a clearing, the scene that greeted them was even stranger. There had been 8 to 10 massive logs lying across the ground, each one between 25 and 30 feet long.
When we got to here, there had been about 8 to 10 logs, probably 25 to 30 feet long, maybe a little longer than that. But they were all laying in one direction.
Now the logs were gone, or rather, they had been shredded, pulverized into sawdust and splinters. At first, we thought a bear must have been grubbing for insects, Clint later recalled. But the destruction was so complete, so violent, it didn't look like bear work. It looked like something far stronger had been through there. Even stranger, their horses refused to go forward, while Clint's young colt tossed his head and tried to turn back down the mountain. Whatever had done this, the animals wanted no part of it.
When we got here, the logs no longer existed. They were just pulverized. They'd just been shredded. And we took it for granted that a bunch of bears or a bear had been in here and grubbing the grubs out of these logs, because they were just shredded, just tore to pieces. And it was just like sawdust all over the ground. And we tried and tried and tried to even get off the horses and lead them through to get over to the trail that goes up the hillside over here.
Still determined to find gold, Clint and Brian pressed on. By midday, Clint was panning in the creek while Brian collected tailings a short distance away. That's when Brian saw something moving high on the mountain slope. a dark figure, large and upright, striding across the hillside. Before he could get a clear look, it vanished into the trees. Brian ran back toward Clint and shouted down to him, "Let's get the hell out of here." Clint grabbed his gear and began loading it onto the horses. Brian, less experienced on horseback, took the calmer mare. Then, as Clint bent to adjust his gear, he felt it, the unmistakable sensation that he was being watched. He turned to look over his shoulder, and that's when he saw it. Striding down the open area toward him was a massive, hair-covered figure. Its long arms swung at its sides as it walked. Clint could make out details: a burr stuck in the hair on its chest, a smear of something dark across its face, blood perhaps, or juice from wild berries.
Like something was looking at me. I turned and looked over my shoulder, and as I did, coming right down this open area right here where these deadfall are now, is where I saw Bigfoot. Anyhow, he came towards me. As he got closer, I could see that he had that burr stuck in his hair on his chest. He had a smear of something on his face, whether it was blood or could have been fruit or anything that they'd been eating around this area.
"I just froze," Clint admitted. "I sat there on my horse, staring. I couldn't move." The creature kept coming, closing the distance between them. At about 20 feet away, the smell hit him, a foul, putrid stench that turned his stomach. The horse smelled it too, and that was enough to snap both man and animal out of their shock. Clint shouted to Brian, "We've got to get out of here!"
And I was in shock and just sat there and watched him for quite a while. I don't know how long, but long enough for him to get fairly close. And I finally was yanking on my horse and kicking him, trying to make him go. And as he got within about 20 feet of me, the horse apparently smelled him. And that's about the same time I smelled him. And it was a very putrid odor. And the horse didn't bother him to raise his head. He just took a lunge and went across the creek.
But that was enough to know something serious had happened. Clint's face was pale, his expression stricken. Whatever he had seen, it had shaken him to the core. The two men didn't look back. They rode hard down the mountain, their horses almost out of control, not stopping until they reached the safety of the trailhead. For Clint, the experience left no room for doubt. "People can believe what they want," he said. "But I know what I saw. That thing was real. It wasn't a man. It wasn't a bear. It was Bigfoot."
Those people that are disbelievers, I would just say, you can have your beliefs. That's up to you. What I saw is where I saw Bigfoot.
Even years later, revisiting the site of the encounter, Clint can point to the exact place it stood, and where he looked directly at something that science still refuses to acknowledge. The Oxford Peak sighting remains one of southeastern Idaho's most compelling Bigfoot encounters. The pulverized logs, the terrified horses, the strange scream, all pieces of a puzzle that hint at something far more powerful, far more intelligent, lurking in those remote mountains. And somewhere out there, perhaps still near Oxford Peak, that creature may be watching, waiting for the next prospector to cross its path. Before Bigfoot was a TV phenomenon, the First Nations of British Columbia had been speaking of the Bukwoos, the wild man of the woods, for centuries. One of the most compelling voices to share this oral tradition is native watchman Tom Sewid, who not only believes in the creature, but claims to have seen it with his own eyes. In the early 2000s, Tom was running a floating native gift shop on Village Island, catering to passing tourists, raising his child, and living a simple coastal life. One quiet evening, as soup simmered on the stove, two kayakers stepped inside his float house. The woman, wide-eyed, asked him, "What throws rocks out here?"
In the early 2000 period, I had a floating native gift store in my home for my young child and my common-law wife at the time over in Village Island, catering to the tourists. And I was stirring soup on the stove, and two kayakers walked into the float house, and the woman goes, "What throws rocks out here, bears or squirrels?"
Bears? Squirrels? Her question stopped Tom in his tracks. "What are you talking about?" he asked. She explained that she and her husband were camped on Turner Island. They had been sitting by the water that night gazing at the stars when pebbles started splashing into the water from the tree line.
And it got my attention, so I asked her, "What are you talking about?" And she goes, "Oh, we're camped over on Turner Island at this peninsula." I said, "Yeah, I know the place." And she goes, "We're sitting in a little structure." I said, "Yeah, there's like a lean-to frame on the beach, on the White Shell Beach." And she goes, "We were watching the stars sparkle and reflect on the calm water. And all of a sudden we could hear little pebbles, rocks being thrown from the trees behind us and splashing. Patunk, patunk."
Tom didn't hesitate with his answer. Out here, nothing throws rocks except humans and the wild man of the woods.
Nothing throws rocks out here except for humans and Bakwus, the wild man of the woods, the male Sasquatch. And it's one of their traits. It's a primate characteristic that Diane Fossey and Jane Goodall established back in the 60s with primates, that when threatened or curious, they'll throw rocks.
He explained that this behavior is a well-known primate trait, observed by researchers like Jane Goodall and Diane Fossey. Gorillas and chimps throw rocks when curious or threatened, shake trees, and sometimes push down logs as a warning. And in the Pacific Northwest, those same signs often mean Sasquatch is nearby.
And if they're really threatened, they'll shake foliage or they'll push over dead foliage. And it's documented with chimpanzees, mountain gorillas, orangutans, monkeys, that they do these primate characteristics and acts when they feel threatened. And of course, if you correlate that to Sasquatch Bigfoot sightings, it's rampant. It's across the board.
The woman grew pale. Tom, ever the watchman, offered to help. "Pack up your tent," he told her. "We'll take you to Village Island where you can camp safely on the dock tonight." When he later inspected the campsite, he found something chilling. A young spruce tree freshly snapped and twisted, chest height, not storm damage, not snow. Something powerful had done this within hours.
Bigfoot, it's nothing more than North America's undiscovered great ape, but it's also found in Europe, Asia, even down in the South Pacific, Australia, they call it Yowie, and so forth. But out here we call it Bakwus and Junacha. And when I told that lady about what I thought it was, she got scared. And I said, "Look, ma'am," I said, "I'm a watchman. I'll go grab your tent with your husband, put it in the boat, and we'll bring you over to our Village Island. You can camp on the dock." And she said, "Oh, thank you. I want to do that."
This was not a theory for Tom. He had seen them before. In 1994, while anchored in native anchorage with 3 crewmen, he shined a spotlight and saw them, a massive male and a female, dropping to their knees and hiding their faces behind their arms. For 20 minutes, they watched the creatures from just 100 yards away. Tom says these encounters are not just chance. The snapping, the rock throwing, the tree knocking, they are warnings. When you hear it, you turn around, he says. That's them saying, "My family's here. Don't come closer."
What you're listening for is they chirp when they communicate back and forth. And when they holler, they're whoop, 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 when they call back and forth from one to another. When you hear that banging of tree, you stop, turn around, and go back where you came from. That's the Bakwus telling you, "My family's here. I don't want you coming further."
And for those who don't listen, he warns, some never return. When you're looking at a 700 to 1,000 pound biped with arms as thick as your legs, you don't want to make it angry.
Here's part of that pipe. This is the pipe the thing was leaning on.
Oh, yeah.
It was laid up there in the woods, right back there where them white flowers are.
Yep.
Jeff's voice is deep and steady, but you can hear the memory still shakes him, even after all these years. He takes us back to that winter evening on his family's property near the Uwharrie National Forest. He was just a boy, 8 or 9 years old, running down the road with the dogs to grab the mail. Snow crunched under his boots, and the woods on both sides of the road were too quiet. As he headed back toward the house, he heard his horse going wild in the yard.
And all of a sudden I turned around, I got the mail, I started walking back up. Well, my horse is out there going nuts through the deep snow. I thought, what the heck is your deal? Go back to the barn, you know, you dummy. And he's jumping around, and causing chaos.
The big animal kicked and snorted, trying to jump the fence, something Jeff had never seen him do. I didn't know what the heck was going on, Jeff remembers. I kept walking, but then I heard it, something charging through the woods.
I was getting closer to them woods and the dogs weren't around. I couldn't figure out why. Well, then, at that time, something come like charging through the woods. You could hear boom, 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 trees breaking.
It wasn't a rustle. It was a crash, trees snapping, branches breaking. Whatever it was big and coming straight toward him. Little Jeff froze. His heart pounded in his chest. The dogs were gone, nowhere in sight. I yelled at Diamond, my horse, telling him to knock it off. But then it hit me. It wasn't the horse making that noise. He felt it before he saw it. A presence so close he could sense it breathing. The night was pitch black, and he couldn't make out a clear shape. But every instinct screamed that something was standing right there, just past the fence line. Diamond finally jumped the fence, the only time Jeff had ever seen him do it. The horse bolted straight for him, kicking at the ground and pacing back and forth as if trying to shield him. That was all Jeff needed. I just knew it was time to run, he says. I flew up that road to the house as fast as I could.
He jumped the fence. It's the first time and only time I've ever seen him jump a fence.
Really?
Came running to me. And then the instinct thought, you know,
wow,
it's time to fly.
Yeah.
Inside, he grabbed his dad's shotgun. His dad and brother were right behind him, telling him not to shoot anything. I said I'm just going to fire in the air, Jeff recalls.
And I ran into the house and I grabbed my shotgun. Dad and my brother were asking me, what are you doing? Where are you going with that gun? I said, there's something out here.
Mm-hmm.
He stepped outside, aimed high, and pulled the trigger. The blast echoed through the woods, and then came the sound, a crashing retreat, heavy footsteps tearing away into the darkness. Whatever had been there was gone. Jeff swears he saw something move out of the corner of his eye, just before it disappeared into the trees.
Well, I ran out the door. He says, hold on a minute, don't be shooting, I'm just gonna fire in the air, I said. And I took that shotgun, I went boom! And you could hear whatever it was. And Dad and Kenny were behind me then at that time. And I seen out of the corner of my eye, I'm like looking at the woods like this. They're like right here. And I seen my brother go like that to Dad.
Mm.
His dad and brother exchanged a glance, nodded, and said nothing. They knew something was out there, Jeff says. They just didn't want me to know.
And they both nodded their heads and shook,
Yep.
So they knew about it. They just didn't want
you to know about
me
it.
to know about it,
Right.
as young as I am, you know.
Sure. Wow.
That night stayed with him his whole life. Even now, standing there as an adult, he points out the very spot where the thing had been. The same briars, the same boulders. Some of the trees it trampled are still lying there, decades later.
And we could jump down here. Like I said, I curled up in a fetal position. That thing was 3.5 feet bigger than I was.
Yeah, that's...
But that wasn't Jeff's only encounter. Over the years, working in construction and clearing land for highways, he's seen things he can't explain. Once, he spotted a shape sitting among broken logs, a face that looked almost like a monkey. He went back the next day, and it was still there. The third day, it was gone. And then there were the sounds, deep, resonant knocks in the night, howls that seemed to vibrate through his chest. When that roar hit, you could feel it in your bones, Jeff says, his voice almost a whisper.
When that roar,
yeah,
you could feel it in your chest and your neck. It just vibrated your body.
He's seen the tracks too. Perfect, clear footprints with toes and heels pressed into the dirt. Too big to be a man's, too human to be a bear's. For Jeff, these experiences are not stories. They are warnings.
And when I said, hey, look at that. And I remember Stevie tripping over that when he went to look, so I put my hand up. You know, what is it? I said, it's a footprint. And you could see perfect toes and foot, heel.
They're out here, he says simply. I know they are. They just don't want to be bothered. They're like the protectors of the woods. They let you know when you've crossed the line even now. Decades later, Jeff says he can feel it sometimes. That strange heaviness, like he's being watched. And on certain nights when the woods go quiet and the moon is high, he hears them again, those same sounds that terrified him as a boy. It stayed with me all these years, he says. And I'll tell you what, I believe more now than ever. There's something out there, always has been. Channel, courtesy, Strombo Les Stroud, better known as Survivor Man, has faced jungles, deserts, and ice fields. But one of his most terrifying moments came long before the cameras ever rolled. He was deep in Ontario's Algonquin Park, scouting a location for a survival weekend. Alone, far off the trails, and with no one knowing where he was, Les spotted a massive cow moose grazing in a swamp clearing. She didn't run. That should have been his first warning. On a whim, he practiced a cow call.
So I took off like a shot. I ran as fast as I could for my life. And I ran about probably 300 or 400 yards, and I started to panic and think, I can't keep this up. And I would stop and like hide behind a tree, and if I'd stop, I'd sort of hear him stop. And I'd make a noise, I'd hear him come running again. So he was going based on my noise, he was following me.
A harmless sound, or so he thought. Then, out of the bush, came a nightmare. A 1,500-pound bull moose exploded from the tree line, antlers lowered, red eyes blazing with rutting season rage. Les ran, crashing through the forest, leaping over roots, feeling the bull pounding after him with every step. Each time he stopped, the moose stopped. Each time he moved, the chase resumed. Finally, he scrambled up an angled tree, clinging to a branch 10 feet up, while the moose stomped, snorted, and snapped branches below. Dusk was closing in, and Les knew he couldn't stay there all night. When the moose drifted off, Les jumped down and ran, straight into the lake. Soaked to the bone, he silently swam along the shoreline until he was past the bull, then flagged down a canoeing couple for help. Even then, he had to sprint back into the bush, retrieve his own canoe, and paddle away with the sound of the moose still nearby. It was the most scared I've ever been in the wilderness, Les says. 1,500 pounds of rage will do that to you. This footage, taken from the Travel Channel's YouTube archives, tells one of the most disturbing family encounters ever documented. It began not with a sighting, but with a feeling. It was an ordinary afternoon. The family had been outside, enjoying the yard, when the mother suddenly froze. I got goosebumps, she later said. It felt like something was coming, from the trees. There was no sound, no movement, and yet the stillness felt wrong, heavy, charged, as if someone unseen was standing just out of sight, watching. Then she noticed something that made her heart drop. The children's swings, which had been still just moments ago, were now swaying back and forth, slowly, rhythmically. The children themselves were nowhere to be seen. Panic set in.
It was just an eerie feeling. My hair stood up from the back of my neck. It felt like it was coming from the trees. The kids, they weren't there. There was nobody.
Both parents began shouting their names, running across the yard, searching desperately. And then they saw them, standing at the edge of the tree line, completely still, completely silent. They looked frozen, the mother said, like they weren't really there. The children were standing shoulder to shoulder, facing the trees, unmoving, as if in a trance.
Tom! I was searching for them and yelling for them, but they wouldn't respond to us.
Tom? April! It was scary.
Tom! I was scared. You know, that's my son, my only son. Tom! To me, the military instinct is just try to find them.
I think I see them.
I ran through the bushes and the trees over there. thank God that we found them.
Tom.
And I said, what are y'all doing?
Tom, I'm glad you're okay.
They were like kind of hypnotized, like they were in a trance-like state.
When the parents rushed to them, the kids didn't speak at first. They simply turned, slowly, as though waking up from a dream. When the mother pressed them, they told her something that chilled her blood. "The man in black was calling us," they said. "He told us to come." Who was this man? No one had been seen, no footsteps heard, and yet the children were convinced they had followed someone, or something, into the woods. The mother's instincts told her to get the children inside. She grabbed them by the hands and rushed them back to the house. But the father, a former serviceman, stayed behind. His training told him to investigate.
The kids did say that they followed somebody.
They said the man in black was calling them, and that the man in black called them into the woods.
Man in black?
It was kind of creepy, you know?
Take them. I'm gonna find them. Come on, let's go back.
He moved toward the trees, scanning the ground, listening for any movement. He expected to catch a glimpse of a trespasser, a prankster, maybe even a wild animal, but there was nothing. "I had that feeling," he admitted, "that someone was still there, but I couldn't see them. And then I just decided to stop, to pretend like nothing had happened. It was the only way to calm the children and themselves. But they knew what they had experienced was not nothing. That night, the house was locked up tight. No one slept well.
I searched everywhere, trying to see if I could find this man in black, but I didn't find nobody.
After that day, I would get chills. You know, goosebumps.
I tried to kind of like ignore the situation. I'm trying to think it's not real, but I was afraid.
The mother kept replaying the moment over and over. The empty yard, the swinging swings, the children standing silent at the tree line. Whatever had called to her kids that day, she believed, wasn't human. And deep down, they all knew it might come back. Footage courtesy of Destination America. This chilling account is taken straight from one of their most unforgettable episodes. A first-hand testimony from a seasoned camper. This wasn't a weekend getaway or a casual family trip. This was deep in the wilderness, remote, rugged, the kind of place you only venture into if you know what you're doing. No fun and games, no tourist campfires. This was survival country. As the sun dipped below the tree line, painting the forest in fading orange light, the group made a decision. Instead of stopping for the night on a mossy finger ridge, they pushed on, another half-mile before making camp. That choice would lead them straight into one of the most terrifying nights of their lives.
We left the trailhead probably, I'm going to say, around 2 o'clock. We ended up going probably about 1.5 miles past Camp Pleasant.
They were tired but alert, trekking carefully through the brush when it happened. A sound, loud, heavy, violent, shattered the silence. "We stopped dead in our tracks," the camper recalled. "That crash was big, too big for a branch falling. Something made that sound. Before they could even process it, something else happened. A rock, a large one, came crashing down, landing just 10 feet to their left. It wasn't a random fall, it had been thrown. That's when it hit me," he said. "Someone was out there, or something fierce surged through them."
And then all of a sudden we hear this crash. And we just kind of stopped. And the only thing that I could think of at the time was maybe we spooked an elk because the crash was pretty big. It sounded heavy. As we're peering to the left, all of a sudden here comes a rock. And it lands about 10 feet to the left of us. It was deliberately thrown. And at that point, time just kind of freezes.
Were they being hunted? Was this an ambush? The forest felt suddenly alive with tension, every shadow now suspect. And then it happened again. Another rock, same size, same weight, landed in the exact same spot as the first. Deliberate, calculated. That's when it got real, he admitted. This wasn't random. Whatever it was letting us know it was there.
As we're processing that, another rock flies and lands, almost hits the other one. Very accurately thrown. Lands about 10, 12 feet to the left of us again. And then it's just like it got real at that moment. There was an overwhelming feeling of being in trouble, being in danger. Something felt very wrong. It was a very dreadful feeling.
The group went into full panic mode and ran. The woods, once quiet, now seemed to close in around them. Every step felt heavy, every second stretched into slow motion. Adrenaline flooded their bodies, but it wasn't enough to drown out the dread. That's when the camper remembered. He had a .357 Magnum in his pack. He stopped, hands shaking, and pulled out the weapon. It was his only source of confidence in that moment. He turned, and that's when he saw it. Standing just beyond the tree line was a figure, massive, dark, its shoulders impossibly wide, its posture upright and powerful. "I knew what I was looking at," he said. That was Bigfoot. Time seemed to freeze. The creature didn't move. It just stood there, watching.
I don't know if you've ever been in a dream and something's chasing you and you're having a difficult time moving. It was almost like everything was in slow motion. I'm headed down the ridge at this point, and I remembered that I had a .357 in my backpack. I stopped, pulled out my gun, and just very quickly looked back. I saw a Bigfoot.
In that instant, he had a choice. Fight or run. He could have taken the shot, but he didn't. Instead, survival instinct took over. He turned and ran, crashing through the forest, not stopping until he was far, far from that ridge. Even now, he says, the memory of those thrown stones still makes his skin crawl.
And I knew exactly what was throwing the rocks at us at that point. It was very large. The light was faded to a point to where I couldn't make out facial features, but I was absolutely terrified. I can tell you without a doubt that was one of the scariest moments of my life.
This video was shared by the Rocky Mountain Squatch YouTube channel, shared by someone named Kenneth. The morning was calm, too calm.
At the end of the video, I was walking through camp early morning when I felt like someone or something was watching me up on the ridge.
Kenneth, walking through his campsite by Carson River, felt a strange feeling of being watched. It was a guess, an instinct that most of us would ignore, but Kenneth's gut told him otherwise. Up on the ridge, something didn't feel right.
So he zoomed up in there with his cell phone video, obviously, and
so he pulled out his cell phone, zoomed in on the area, and began recording. Little did he know, he was about to capture something extraordinary. It started off normal, as most strange encounters do. The camera zoomed in, panning slowly across the ridge. At the far edge of the frame, something moved. A hulking figure, muscular and broad, stood there, seemingly frozen for a moment. It was so tall, so imposing, that at first it seemed like it was completely out of place in the wild.
I wanted to show you zoomed before I stabilized it, because sometimes it's a little clearer. I mean, he's zooming way up there with his cell phone.
And then, in a crazy moment that left Kenneth frozen, it reached up with one arm, grabbed hold of the tree and pulled itself up smoothly. What was strange wasn't just the creature's size. It was how fluidly it moved.
A football player-sized person with all their pads and everything on and hoist themselves up into a tree. All right, I'm going to play it.
Despite its size, the figure hoisted itself up the tree like it had done it 1,000 times before. Impossible for a human or any known creatures. Kenneth's daughter, who had been reviewing the footage later, was the first to spot it.
Show you the zoomed-in clip. And then after the zoomed-in clip, I will stabilize the zoomed-in clip. I just wanted...
Initially, Kenneth had missed it. But once she pointed it out, Kenneth realized the gravity of what he had captured. The footage was grainy, but the figure was undeniable. Was this a person? A huge one, maybe, but the way it moved didn't match anything human. Was it Bigfoot? Could it be? No one was certain, but the video was beyond anything normal.
Okay.
As the video zoomed in and stabilized, the figure became even clearer. It stood taller than any man, its shape wide, bipedal, almost like a football player wearing full gear, but without any equipment. And then the most shocking part of the footage.
You're kind of walking around and then boom, up into a tree. It's just crazy. That thing's huge.
It climbed the tree with the strength and mobility of something far more powerful than any human. The zoomed-in, stabilized video revealed the incredible sight once more. The figure's movement was fluid, and the strength it showed defied what should be possible. Whatever it wasn't like anything they had ever encountered before. Bigfoot or not, it's big, it's fast, and it's up in a tree. That was the final thought as the team reviewed the footage once more. But one thing was clear as day.
Very Bigfooty. It's out of the ordinary, unusual. If that's a...
The truth was out there, and this was a clue, an important one. Kenneth had captured something that, no matter the answer, no one could ignore.
More time. Amazing footage. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for sending this in to us, Kenneth.
What if the creature you've been hunting was already watching you, closer than you ever dared to imagine? One night in the dense wilds of North Florida, two seasoned researchers found themselves within 10 yards of something growling, something with red eyes, size 16 footprints, and the power to trigger car alarms without ever being seen. Was it the elusive skunk ape, or something even stranger? Welcome to Bigfoot Stacy, a raw and relentless YouTube channel that's earned respect in the cryptid research community for boots-on-the-ground investigations into Florida's wildest Bigfoot territory.
Parked out so that we wouldn't disturb anybody. Parked out pretty far from where everybody would be. Locked the truck up, started to go on our way.
Known for their no-fluff, deep woods approach, Bigfoot Stacy and his team have been documenting the unexplained for years, particularly through their Apalachicola skunk ape project. This isn't just another shaky cam cryptid chase. This is methodical research fused with real danger and real evidence. In this chilling segment from September 24, 2016, two members of the team returned to a known habituation site deep in the Apalachicola wilderness, just after a terrifying overnight encounter. The energy was tense, the story was fresh, and something had been watching them. But it wasn't just the darkness they were up against.
Today is September 24th, and I'm David Lauer, investigating one of our Apalachicola tracks, one of our habituation sites out here last night.
That night started like many others, with equipment checks and a quiet walk through the woods. But when their vehicle alarm began blaring in the middle of nowhere, things quickly escalated. They circled the truck, alone in the woods, and that's when they noticed strange streaks on the hood.
There was some activity. There was an encounter that happened about 65 yards over here from this.
Before they could make sense of it, a deep guttural growl shattered the silence. It came from just 10 yards away. What followed was a moment of raw fear. Red eye shine flickered from behind a tree.
My buddy sat and watched, saw a red eye shine, watched it for about 20 seconds to make sure.
One of the men watched it, unblinking, for nearly 20 seconds. His partner caught a 2-second glimpse before the creature vanished. They sat frozen, overwhelmed by what had just happened. Watch for yourself how close they came to the unknown.
You can see it's roughly 16.5 to 16 inches long. A few feet in front of that, and this impression here.
But the next day is where things took a turn toward scientific credibility. The team began scanning the area. What they found wasn't vague or anecdotal, it was tangible. A trail of massive tracks led up and down a hill, one after another. Some measuring 14 inches, others 16 inches, pointing toward the possibility of multiple creatures in the area. The prints showed clear toe indentations.
And this track also measures roughly 16 inches
and
as well.
We're walking down this trail checking for any more tracks from the encounter we had last night.
The team didn't just observe, they began casting them, preserving physical evidence for study. And here's where it gets interesting. These tracks weren't random. They were found near a food plot, game trail, and young pine thickets, a perfect corridor for a creature that knows how to move unseen. These weren't just footprints. They told a story of presence, one that couldn't be easily dismissed.
Yeah, food plot. Food plot. You can see it's approximately 14 inches long. Here's the heel. Here's the toes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
When one of the prints was examined, 5 distinct toe impressions were visible. Another track nearby was nearly identical in size, proof that at least 2 separate animals were walking that trail. And where there are tracks, there's the potential for hair snags, the next target in the team's search. Listen closely to their real-time analysis and the growing realization. They were not alone. Watch for yourself as they uncover the trackway.
You can see the indentation of the brake. And on further inspection, we have a game trail right here.
Throughout the investigation, the team's tone shifts from cautious skepticism to quiet awe. They've seen many things out in the woods, but this event, these tracks, and that growl all added up to one of their most compelling experiences yet. And when you hear them say, "This is the best find we've had to date," you realize this wasn't just another night in the woods.
The ones we found closer to the parking lot pad were also 16.
This was a turning point. As they continue casting tracks and connecting patterns, one statement hits hard. They're here. That sentence doesn't come lightly from these guys. It's a conclusion built on experience, repeated signs, and now physical evidence. The tracks led straight down a trail to a half-pad print with all 5 toes still visible, being cast right there on camera. See for yourself what convinced them this wasn't a one-off encounter. Play here.
Sir, we're at our habituation site, September 24th, Apalachicola Tract.
So, here's the question. Are these just legends? Or are we finally getting closer to understanding a creature that's been slipping through human fingers for centuries? Let us know in the comments. Do you think the Apalachicola skunk ape is real? And what would you do if you heard that growl in the dark? What happens when the legend you've only heard about comes knocking on your camper door? Today we dive into a terrifying encounter with a creature known as Bigfoot. Deep in the dense wilderness, a camper was unfolding his horrified experience. He thought it was a figure who caused trouble. He rejected the whole thing without hesitation. That was the moment everything changed for him. He couldn't deny it anymore after that. For outdoorsmen, Ted's story became reality after a violent encounter that night.
All of a sudden, the motorhome shook violently. It listed 30 degrees or so. I would anticipate that the tires just about came off the ground.
While sleeping in his motor camp in the middle of Vancouver Island, he went from doubter to believer. He had no idea what was coming. All of a sudden, the motor shook violently. One moment, silence. The next motor home quaked fiercely. It felt like something had grabbed hold on it and refused to let it go. It listed 30 degrees or so he would anticipate.
I could see the spectrum of this creature, and it was standing on 2 legs for sure, and it had two upper limbs, and it was extremely hairy, matted hair.
That the tires just about came off the ground startled. Why does it feel wrong? He realized then it wasn't an earthquake. Something huge was rocking the motorhome. It hit him like cold water. Something big, really, really big. A shadow blotted out of the window, tall, impossibly still. It was already there. He saw the spectrum of that creature. It was standing on 2 legs for sure, and it had 2 upper limbs, and it was extremely hairy knotted hair. It was the posture that chilled him. It wasn't slithering or skittering. Without thinking, he was up, feet on the floor, body in motion. He ran outside, straight at the thing that has no right to stand like a man. The smell in the air was very stinky, strong, almost dead fish, but musky was very prominent.
I got to the tree line where the firelight had stopped. So basically it was where I was looking into blackness and I'm lit up.
He could hear the footsteps of that creature and it stopped, as it knew he was there. You heard it too, didn't you?
That's when I could hear the footsteps of this creature stop, as it knew I was there.
If I run, will it follow me? The whole moment was still, quiet and eerie. He had no way of defending himself. He pulled himself inside the motorhome, never encountering the creature again. We are going to have a lot of potential Bigfoot evidence. Not much happens in this part of Florida. Has anyone here ever spotted Bigfoot? Hands up. A man named Jeff, unfolding his experience 3 days ago, stopped at the north entrance at Myakka River State Park. He felt something was watching him. Suddenly he stopped. He looked to his right where he made eye contact with a very tall, hairy creature. He greeted the creature, a shaggy beast, a simple hey. Without a word, it turned around and ambled into the woods, vanishing between the trees.
My name is Jeff. This happened 3 days ago. Stopped at the north entrance to Myakka River State Park. I felt that something was watching me. I stopped, I looked to my right, and I made eye contact with a very tall, hairy hominid, and I said, hey, and it turned around and ambled off into the woods.
Another boy standing nearby spoke up about his encounter. He was walking and felt like something or someone was staring at him, so he turned around and was astonished to see the large creature. He was amazed. What do you think about the creature? Could it be a Sasquatch? He pulled the scope, zoomed in and put it right at it. It had brown eyes, the nose was flattened out, and all I remember is just watching it. We just turned around and looked like it was completely gone.
Walking and I just felt like somebody was staring at me. So I turned around and I was like, who is that?
I pulled the scope and looked right at it, zoomed in on it. Big brown eyes, the nose was like flattened out, and all I can remember is just watching it breathe. We just turned around and head back to the house, turned around and looked, and it was completely gone.
In April 2012, a man was hitchhiking, and he was going to go down and camp out underneath the underpass. He lay down and slept for a short time, woke up to a weird, strange, and unfamiliar sound that was coming right down the embankment. It was a terrifying moment. We know Myakka was a hot spot, and the number of witnesses at the town hall just confirmed that. The woman rubbed her eyes, convinced it couldn't be what it looked like, Bigfoot. They all compare it to a bear, a cow, and a human all at once is what it sounded like. The hair was very long, just flowing in the wind all the way down the body.
In April of 2012, and I was going to go down and camp out underneath the underpass. And slept for a little while, and I woke up to a strange sound that was coming right down the embankment. Just like the ah.
Another camper spotted 2 big red eyes. He backed up, eyes popping. He was like, either I'm hallucinating or that's Bigfoot. No way. The investigators are collecting some pretty interesting reports from all across Southwest Florida, but there are few to focus on, including some that are very recent. They are going to look into those reports and hopefully they can nail down that area that's in the general Myakka.
And I was like, holy crap.
We're getting some pretty interesting reports here from all across Southwest Florida, but there's a few we want to focus on, including some that are very recent. We're going to look into these reports, and hopefully we can nail down an area that's in the general Myakka area that we can focus on for our final night.
The road was Queet, and he walked it simply to stretch his legs and clear his mind. The air felt strange, and the creepy sensation made him stop. Slowly, he turned to the left, searching for the source of feeling. His breath caught as he made eye contact with a massive ape-like creature, watching him silently. He'd heard the tales, but never believed them, until now. That thing could only be Bigfoot. He gave a hesitate, "Hey," and the creature simply ambled off into the trees.
I was walking down the road, just getting a little exercise, and I got a creepy feeling. So I stopped and I looked to the left, and I immediately made eye contact with a big, hairy hominid. I knew the only thing it could be was a Bigfoot. Finally, I said, "Hey!" And it ambled off into the palmettos and disappeared.
When the sun sets and darkness falls, a different world awakens. The night, often feared, often misunderstood, becomes a stage of stories unseen in daylight. Ronnie and Mariah caught in the middle of two vocalizations. They have vocalization on both sides of them. So they're in front and behind of where they're just traveling into. It sounds to Russell like they've actually placed themselves in the middle of that attention. "Hey Ronnie, there's something moving. Did you hear it? It's coming from over there."
You're caught in the middle of two vocalizations.
Copy. They have vocalizations on both sides of them, so they're in front and behind of where they're just traveling into. It sounds to me like they've actually placed themselves in the center of that attention.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
It's coming from that direction.
It watched from the edges. Its involvement was secret, a secret that could shatter lives if ever brought to light. They have no idea what that is. In the dead of night, something hit the ground. Something either fell or was thrown just now. There's definitely something moving there. He thought something was coming up their way. It's definitely a vantage point for them to be up higher. She could still hear it up, sharp and sudden. The sound they heard was back there. Whatever made that sound is probably coming that way, because they keep on hearing those creepy sounds. What do you think? What kind of animal sounds like that?
Did you hear that?
Yes, I'm.
Something either fell or was thrown just now.
There's definitely movement over here. I think something's coming up this way. I feel like we need to be on higher ground.
All right, well then let's go that way. Well, it's definitely a vantage point for them to be up higher.
Yeah.
That wasn't an echo. That was something else. Something, or someone, was tracking Ronnie and Mariah. At first it was just one branch snap, then another, then three. All of them were in different directions. Too many, too close. It had a pattern now, a purpose. They are not trying to catch them. They are trying to trap them, aren't they? Russell knows for a fact that if they call for him and need his help, he'll definitely go.
So you think whatever we heard up there is now down there?
Yeah, they're tracking us. They're coming around now. Oh boy. 1, 2, 3. There are 3, not 2.
I know for a fact that if they call for me, or they need my help, I go.
The sync Sasquatch footage in Logan Canyon of Utah. It became clear to investigators after doing a size comparison on location, using a man that is 6 feet tall and 220 pounds, how large this Sasquatch is around 1 to 2 feet taller than the human is, and is over twice as wide and twice as thick. It's too big to a man, too heavy. He is confident that the video is legit and believes a large hominid species did indeed exist. This thing, whatever it is, it's not human. He kept his eyes fixed in the direction. The creature had walked the fading footsteps, stirring a quiet question in the back of his mind. What was it really searching for? He discovered dozens of tracks scattered across the ground, fresh, overlapping, and hinting at a presence both recent and elusive, as if the creature had left silent warnings. No way. This Sasquatch video is next level, wild, mysterious, and totally mind-blowing when compared to a large man.
And 220 pounds, how large this Sasquatch is. It's around 1 to 2 feet taller than he is, and is over twice as wide and twice as thick. Searching in the direction the creature was walking, we discovered dozens of tracks along a creek that are around 15 inches long and nearly 8 inches wide at the toe splay.
Their expedition led them to the famous deadly bomb site, a place whispered about in fearful legends of Bigfoot. They discovered deep, massive, giant tracks marked the ground, an eerie signature left behind by something vast and elusive. A few feet from a log structure that contains massive logs on a steep mountainside. The track was sunk several inches deep into the soft earth, and its toes stove in the deep mountainside. The track was over 14 inches long and was nearly 8 inches wide at the toe splay. An enormous print that spoke of a creature far larger than anything they had ever seen. Only a few steps ago, from a massive log structure, the huge Bigfoot track pressed deep into the earth, a hunting reminder that something immense and unknown was near. This Bigfoot track was only a few feet away from a massive log structure. It was pointed right towards this structure, which appeared to be filled with heavily relocated logs.
The track was sunk in a few inches, and its toes drove into the steep mountainside. The track was over 14 inches long and was nearly 8 inches wide at the toe splay. This Bigfoot track was only a few feet away from a massive log structure. It was pointed right towards this structure that appears to be...
So what do we make of it all? From mountain ridges to backwoods roads, from ancient legends to modern-day trail cameras, the stories remain eerily consistent. Something powerful, intelligent, and elusive is sharing these forests with us. Whether it's leaving behind twisted trees, answering with knocks in the night, or simply standing in the shadows watching, these encounters remind us that the wilderness still holds secrets. Maybe the question isn't if something is out there, but how much longer it will choose to stay hidden.